Eventually, in a lush Rachmaninoff-like romantic background, she comes into your life with the song, I Won Your Love. I remember you came to me at a moment when I needed a love in my life. Then you called out of nowhere at all. The soft, sweet sound of your voice, it ran right through me and led to a dinner for two. Our meeting of minds, our hearts followed too. Next thing we knew, we were having such fun, and I won your love, and I won your love. You came to me at a moment when I needed a love in my life. Ring of my phone out of nowhere at all. The soft, sweet sound of your voice, it ran right through me and led to a movie or two. The touch of our hands, our hearts followed too. Next thing we knew, we were having such fun, and I won your love, and I won your love. I won your love. That was my second song of I Won Your Love, and this next story relates to a different kind of love. This involves a 15-year-old girl, teenager, who had been on a number of drugs. Particularly, she had been on PCP, phencyclidine. In the vernacular of the street, is called angel dust. She was addicted and was admitted to the 6th floor psychiatric rehab unit of one of the local hospitals in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Her friends came up to visit her, and they surreptitiously or sneakily gave her some of the drug. She was able to break free of her restraints and started running down the hallway, screaming and yelling, I want to fly, I want to fly. And she tried to by jumping out the 6th-story window and landing by gravity into the garden, into the flower garden, actually, right next to the emergency room. The problem was, when she landed, she was in a standing position. When you're in a standing position, you take a fall that far, the difficulty is in your spine. There's a weak place in the junction between your thoracic spine and your lumbar spine. The difference being, in the thoracic spine, your ribs are there to give a good support to the rib cage. However, at the lumbar spine, there are no ribs there, so that's a weak point. As a matter of fact, with parachutists, that's where they have the most trouble. Anyway, she fell, and the inertia and forces were so great that it actually broke her spine at a 90-degree angle, just like this. So that rendered her paralyzed right away. However, there was some sensation that she could feel, and I was called and immediately rushed her into the operating room with an orthopedic surgeon, and we decompressed her spine, we realigned her spine, and then fused it with what's called Harrington rods, which came to use at that time in the early 70s, around 1975, 1976, and we were able to straighten her out. Curiously, it should be mentioned that on the way to the operating room, I'll never forget her face. She was very calm, pale, with her eyes wide open, and kept shouting, "They're going to make me new wings. They're going to make me new wings." This did have a happy ending because she did recover virtually all of her function, particularly as regards walking and being able to move and her sensation. There were some other pelvic areas that there was still some difficulty. However, she did go on to finish high school, finish college, become an advocate for not using drugs with teenagers, and actually was a lawyer as well. She was married and had children afterwards, and again, this is just a nice, happy ending to a very poor beginning. This next dramatic story involves an 11-year-old English boy who was playing with one of his friends with a rifle pellet gun. He was accidentally shot in the back of his head and brought to the emergency room in Olney, Maryland, at the Montgomery General Hospital. He was comatose, and I was called to see him. At that time, I said, I cannot do this type of surgery here. I have to take him down to Children's Hospital, National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. I said, call for an ambulance. One of the nurses then informed me, Doc, as of today, we have a helicopter service that has been initiated. I said, fine, call the helicopter. So the helicopter came up, again, this was in the evening sometime, and landed, and the whirlybird was there, and there was the pilot, and then the medical technician. Well, at this point, we had intubated the patient, and we were keeping him alive with breathing through an ambu bag where you control the respiration of oxygen going in and carbon dioxide going out. Since there was only room on the helicopter for 2 people, I said to the medical tech, I know you want to do this, but really, I think I'm going to have to take your place. You stay here, I'll fly down with the patient. So we took the helicopter as fast as possible, flying into Washington, D.C. with all the views at night, with all the lights and this and that. And I kept working with the ambu bag, keeping the patient alive with breathing for him. And then we landed at Children's Hospital at the heliport, and were greeted by a whole host of medical personnel, the technicians, the nurses, other doctors, and we quickly took him up to the operating room, where I was able to decompress the back of his head and neck and remove the brain tissue that was damaged. So I did a debridement of this and cleaned up everything all the way down to his brain stem. Now, the pellet itself was lodged deep in his brain stem, and it simply was too dangerous to try and remove that. I felt that now all the pressure had been removed, and it was time to tip my hat and say goodnight and do the closure. We closed him up, and he did exceedingly well, I must say. He had a little bit of a paralysis, that's only a slight weakness of one of the muscles of his eyes, and occasionally saw a little bit of double. The rest of the story is curious. He gets better and he leaves, and I follow him on my usual post-operative course, and he goes back to England. His father was the manager of a very high-class automobile showcase in Maryland. And the son came back when he was 10 years later, when he was 21, and he wanted to work for his father and get his license. So he had to come to me to be cleared to get his driver's license once again. He comes to my office, I did a full examination, and then I said to him, this is sort of like the story about Ghazi Yasser going away. I said, do you realize what happened to you? He said, no, not really. And I told him the whole story. The gunshot wound, the helicopter flight, the recovery, all that sort of thing. And I think after doing that and giving him his release and giving him a thorough neurological evaluation, I think my charge for that was something like $48 or $52, something like that. He starts screaming at me, "You're charging me $52 for doing this?" And I said, "What?" So I was surprised, but nonetheless, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, do me a favor. I want you not to pay the $52, but just go ahead and have a good life." And that was the end of that story. So patients are all different, and like I said before, they're like people. Some are appreciative, some are not. Some you like and some you don't like. Anyway, I do again hope you enjoyed my recounting all these personal stories.